My name is Ahmed Al-Jalad, and I consider myself an epigraphist. I was trained as a linguist in the ancient languages of the Near East, the Semitic languages, and after my PhD, I became interested in the ancient inscriptions of the Arabian Peninsula and the adjacent deserts of Syria and Jordan. The region is filled with thousands, tens of thousands of texts in ancient languages that are no longer spoken today, that were lost to history until these inscriptions were discovered. And I'm involved in several projects to collect, document, and decipher these texts and write for the first time the history, the ancient history of the region based on documentary evidence, based on evidence from the time period. I work for two institutes at Leiden University, the Leiden Institute for Area Studies and the Leiden University Center for Linguistics. And epigraphic research is really one of these areas where both institutes overlap, because when you study an epigraph, when you study an ancient inscription, you need the tools of linguistics to decipher its language, to understand what the text says, but you also need the toolkit of a historian to contextualize those words and understand what they mean in their contexts. So in both ways, collaborating with scholars in linguistics and in historians and religious studies, people in area studies, is the only way to truly get at what you can extract from an epigraph, and how you can use epigraphy and how you can use these documents to write both linguistic history and social history. Yeah, so one of the most interesting and I think enriching experiences I've had was working in Saudi Arabia. We, as I mentioned earlier, we work with partners from Oxford, from France, from Paris, and also local Saudi partners. And the project there in specific, we're excavating a lost city. And it really is that. We don't know the name of the city. We don't know, we know that this region where we work in Eastern Arabia was home to a large metropolis in ancient times called Gera, but we don't know where it is. And we're excavating a rather large site that we think might be that city. And the huge city walls, sprawling streets, perhaps even a big temple in the middle of the city. And we've just begun this project. And this is a project that's incredibly important for the history and the national heritage of Saudi Arabia, and in fact, global heritage, right? It's human history. And it's important for us at Leiden as epigraphists because they had their own language, their own script that we're interested in. We're interested in deciphering these texts, and our partners in France who are archaeologists who want to understand the history of the site through archaeology. But having three partners from three different academic cultures, from three different parts of the world, really, working together can be rather complicated. We have different ways of understanding things, we have different organizational methods, and so it really is an interesting laboratory of how to facilitate international conversation and dialogue. And one of the other things that I think is particularly exciting about this project is we're invested in training local students and local academics. We're really trying to put together the first generation of highly trained and skilled Saudi archaeologists and Saudi epigraphists working on their own heritage with us as partners rather than under us. And we're hoping that by doing this, we can foster an appreciation for the pre-Islamic past in Saudi Arabia and artifacts and this part of we'll say the nation's culture. And indeed, this is the only way to safeguard this kind of material for future generations. We can't do it by putting it on a UN list. We can't do it by making documentaries about it, but rather going there, training locals and getting locals to understand why this part of their heritage is important to them and to the whole world. So I work on I'll talk about my work in Jordan. I work on a corpus, on a body of texts, of inscriptions called Safiatic. These number around 50,000. They were produced probably by nomads in the between 2000 and 1800 years ago. They come from the Jordanian desert, and what's important about these texts is that they contain information about the daily lives of people from this period, but also of historical events, and they are in an ancient form of the Arabic language. They are the most important testimony to Arabic before Islam. Yet when you go to the National Museum in Jordan, there's not a single exhibition on them. I was invited to Yarmouk University in northern Jordan, one of the largest universities in Jordan, to give a lecture on my research. And I read to the audience a text that we had discovered in the desert, ancient poem, probably the oldest piece of Arabic literature. And I read it to them and they could understand it and they were shocked. Why do we not know about this? Why is this not in the papers? Why, we want this. We want to get involved with this. This is so interesting. This is so important for our heritage. And I think, well, part of the problem with academics is that we often confuse valorization with self-promotion. And we want to be humble. And so we don't communicate our research and what we do to the public because we're afraid to be seen as somehow promoting ourselves and being arrogant. But in the fact, it is a responsibility because it's really the only way to foster an understanding for what we do and an appreciation of its importance among the public. And this means this works for the region where I work in the Middle East, but it's also true in Europe. It's important for us to engage in valorization in both places because that's how we build partnerships. That's how we get the public involved. That's whose tax money is in fact supporting what we do and how to get them to understand why what we do is important for human history, for local and international heritage. So this is connected actually to the previous answer, the importance of communicating our research to the public. Now, my interest in open access began when I wanted to publish an article that I produced within the scheme of a grant that I had acquired, and the grant requires open access publishing. And I went to the most popular journal in our field, and I wanted to publish it there, open access, and they requested 5,000 euros so that my article could be read by the public. Otherwise, you would need to be part of a university that had a subscription to the journal or pay the fees of JSTOR or anything else. And I said, well, my project doesn't have 5,000 extra euros for this. I thought, what can I do? I decided to start my own journal. And so I went to the university library and I spoke with them and I said, look, I don't really understand what's in the way of us doing our own journal. I have a network of top academics who serve on boards of other journals. I have the technical infrastructure. We just need someone to archive it and to index it. And we developed this approach with the university library so that the university library, the Leiden University Library, publishes a journal on Arabian epigraphy called Arabian Epigraphic Notes. And we have submissions from the top scholars in the field. We are in our 3rd issue. And it's, of course, completely free, and it's completely online, and there's a hard copy. If you want it, you can just print it out. Now, what was the side effect of this? Because it's online and because it's free, everyone, even hobbyists who have an interest in this field, are able to access it. And our research has become so popular. It's on message boards, it's gone into Wikipedia because everyone can just read it. And this is especially important for our Middle Eastern partners. We can't take for granted that Middle Eastern universities, for example, have subscriptions to these very expensive journals. They often don't. And this allows Middle Eastern scholars, for example, to read and access research without a paywall and to, of course, publish their work and have that accessible from their peers as well. What we are doing basically is removing the glass ceiling that separates scientific research from the public. When it's in a let's say pay-for-play journal, you need a university affiliation to access research. But I think research should be accessible by everyone. And that is my commitment to open access. I think that it's really about, well, valorization, not self-promotion, valorization.